Hey everybody, today I am out in New York City taking a look at one of the most hotly anticipated Jeep models in quite some time. It's not a new Wrangler, it's the new all-electric Wagoneer S. You can think of this as kind of the electric Grand Cherokee, even though they are calling this the Wagoneer. I'll talk more about that relationship in just a little bit, but first let's talk about the styling up front. You'll notice that it has a reinterpretation of the signature 7-slot grille with lighting under those sections. What's really cool about this is that so many EVs out there just get a flat front end with a painted on grille-like thing because of course aerodynamics is really important, but Jeep found a new way to do a different style and still make it look kind of like a Jeep, I guess, in that form there. Obviously everything is really sleek around the sides though, so we get these really curvaceous LED headlights there. Everything is really smooth up front. Coming around to the side, you'll notice that we have 235 width tires, not the widest in a modern Jeep if I'm honest, but obviously aerodynamics and efficiency is incredibly important. Now let's talk about the size of the Wagoneer S, because this I think is where a lot of early predictions just simply got it wrong. This, as you can see, is not an electric Wagoneer. It's a new model in the Jeep lineup, and they just decided to pull that Wagoneer name from the bin, I guess, rather than calling it an electric Grand Cherokee. It's interestingly about the same size as the Grand Cherokee two-row, however. It's a little bit narrower, a little bit shorter, and in terms of overall length tip to tail, it's about an inch shorter as well. But very in line with that Grand Cherokee sizing. So mid-size, electric, two-row SUV. Definitely a direct competitor to something like a Polestar 3, the Acura ZDX, the Cadillac Lyriq, etc. And theoretically, if there are less expensive versions in the future, maybe something more mainstream like a Chevy Blazer. We don't have Grand Cherokee-like ground clearance though. It's just under 6.5 inches approximately in the version that we're taking a look at here. If you're sad about that ground clearance figure, you might want to stay tuned because this is probably coming soon. This is the Trackhawk concept for the Wagoneer S. You can find more info on the separate video on that, but long story short, all-terrain tires, 9.5 inches of clearance. Now let's take a look at the rear end styling. I will have to caution you, this is an incredibly early pre-production prototype. Actually, I think it's actually a step before that in the production lineup here. So a lot of things aren't quite right, and they've told us not to completely close the trunk lid. That's why there's this gap here, because if we close it, we may not be able to reopen it. We have LED taillights with this strong light bar running across the back, and definitely an interpretation of the Jeep design language made a little bit sportier with, of course, this two-tiered spoiler. Speaking of the spoiler, this is a huge aero feature. Just check out the size of that spoiler in the back. It also is going to be important when we start talking about cabin accommodations, cargo capacity, etc., the general form of this. But let's talk about what's going on under the hood, because that's kind of cool. Under here, we actually have a small front trunk. They say it's about 3 cubic feet in terms of capacity, and it does have a removable rubber liner, which is a nice touch, and there's no secondary lid. I'm going to refer to my notes here so I make sure I don't get anything wrong. This is riding on the new STLA platform from Stellantis, and it's going to underpin a number of gasoline and electric vehicles. They're calling this a dedicated EV platform because it was designed for electrification right from the beginning. And that's important because under the body we have a big battery. It's just over 100 kilowatt hours in terms of capacity, 100.5 specifically. And if Travis pans around to this side, you'll notice the proportions of the vehicle. We have a nice long wheelbase as well with relatively short overhangs. Definitely in keeping with the proportions that we find in the Grand Cherokee. We also have a symmetrical motor setup, 300 horsepower, just over 300 pound-feet of torque on each axle, giving us a total of 600 horsepower, 617 pound-feet of torque. What I find interesting is that in many ways you could consider this the spiritual successor to the Grand Cherokee Trackhawk, because this is going to go 0 to 60 1/10 of a second faster than that epic model. Let me pause for just one moment and say that at the moment, every version of the Wagoneer S is going to come fully loaded, essentially, because the launch edition is the only model that we know is coming right away. We know there are going to be more models in the future, most likely less expensive models, perhaps with a single electric motor or more powerful motors in the future, something along those lines. But at the moment, most of them are going to look basically like we see here with different colors. So lots of active safety stuff standard, adaptive cruise control, autonomous emergency braking, lane departure prevention, etc., the lane centering system, even Jeep's hands-free driving assistance system. So sort of like Cadillac Super Cruise and Blue Cruise, you can drive eyes on the road, hands-free, standard in the Wagoneer S. We don't know, again, what the future is going to hold as far as other trims, but I would suspect that over time we're going to get less expensive models and probably some models that are maybe a little bit more expensive. We'll talk about pricing in just a moment, though. Now let's go ahead and start checking out the interior. First with the seats. Because this was built on a platform designed for electrification from the beginning, we have a nice low sill there. If you come in closer, you'll notice we have a reasonable amount of headroom, but a little bit less headroom than we find in the Grand Cherokee. Again, the roofline is a little bit lower. We of course have the most adjustable seats that we've seen from Jeep here. Four-way adjustable lumbar support, lots of adjustability here, extending thigh cushions. Looks like there's gonna be front seat massage capability, etc. Definitely very, very comfortable seats. If you like the seats in the regular Wagoneer or the top-end Grand Cherokee models, you're probably really gonna like the Wagoneer S. Now let's check out the back seat, because of course this is where we're gonna find a lot of room in the back, and again, very similar accommodations to those other Jeep models, with, again, a little bit less headroom. I'm gonna go ahead and scoot over to this side of the vehicle, and if you come in close, you'll notice the kind of headroom we have going on here. This model has the panoramic moonroof, of course. We don't know whether all versions will have the panoramic moonroof in the future, but the launch edition, it looks like, will. If I scoot over here to the middle seat position, still a reasonable amount of room, also a decent amount of legroom. The legroom is actually in keeping again with the two-row Grand Cherokee that we already see. Now, moving to the cargo area in the back, we're gonna have to ask someone to open it for us, so hang on one second. And magically, the cargo area is open, so let's see what's going on in here. Again, the cargo area is a little bit smaller than the Grand Cherokee, but that mainly has to do with the rake of this opening. If I move over here, you'll notice that we get a pretty steep angle for this section, lots of aero treatment going on, and so definitely a sort of an eccentric hatch opening, I guess you could say. As we see in other Stellantis vehicles, the button to close the hatch, that's over here, so shorter drivers, passengers, etc. shouldn't have a problem. And that could be handy because it also allows them to have a hatch that's really tall. So at 6 feet tall, you can see I have lots of room to clear the hatch. That's another reason I like that particular design. Let's see what is going on under the floor. No spare tire, didn't really think there would be, but there's extra storage going on there. There's the subwoofer there. There's also the EVSE that comes with the vehicle. Reasonable amount of storage capability in this vehicle. Let's go ahead and take a look at the inside now. Jumping inside, again, we have that big panoramic moonroof there, and yes, there is going to be a power shade as well. The controls pretty similar to other Jeep models up there in the center console. This model has the available red leather upholstery. I do like the look. Some people are going to find that this is just a bit too much red, but don't worry, it's going to come in other colors as well. We get four-way ratchet-style headrests, height-adjustable shoulder belts for the driver and front passenger, and these seats have sort of an off-white piping and stitching on them that I find kind of attractive, but not everybody I know is a fan of this particular color combo. There are also some fabric inserts on the seat right around this area. That's to help prevent future squeaking if you're the kind of person that likes to oil up your leather and have it rub against the center console. It kind of reduces that squeaking. Again, pretty comfortable seat design, ventilated, so we have perforations in the center of the seat on the seat bottom and back cushion. Moving over to the doors, we find the Macintosh speaker logo down there because we're going to have the Macintosh sound system in the launch edition model. And again, lots and lots of red. Also, surprisingly, lots of premium touches. So lots of stitched leather on the doors there, door upper, door mid, hard plastics lower on the doors to help improve durability. We have electric door releases. If I actually pan real quick over here to the driver's side, it's a bit easier to show you over here. This is the electric door release button. And then we have what look like normal handles on the outside, but they're also an electric catch. Moving back over to the passenger side, we have seat memory controls for the passenger, stitched leather dashboard up here, air vents, again, very in keeping with the Grand Cherokee lineup. Passenger side screen there, it looks like it's going to be running basically the same software that we find in the current Grand Cherokee and Wagoneer models, so don't expect the passenger screen to do anything extra versus the models that we've already seen before. In the middle of everything, we have the latest Uconnect infotainment system. I think I like this dashboard design a lot more than some of those big tacked-on screens or the big vertical screens, but let me know what you think about that. The downside to this particular screen layout, however, is that the screens just aren't as big. So if you really love that big screen layout, you might want one of those tacked on tablet designs. They also warned us that not all of the software in this vehicle is complete. I'm actually surprised that they decided to let us crawl all over this vehicle and start poking and prodding, because other companies just don't let us have access to vehicles early in that same way. Over here we have touch controls for the heated seats, ventilated seats, heated steering wheel, and then we have a physical volume knob right over there, also tune and scroll knob. Down here we have some additional controls. We have actually an LCD to control the infotainment system, and it slides up there out of the way so you have access to this huge storage area with USB and HDMI inputs. I like the fact that that's not powered. That's probably going to be less likely to break over time, easier to service. We have the power button for the vehicle there, a rotary style shift knob, park and drive right like that. This is the drive mode selector down there. Lots of texturing going on these panels, and thankfully less piano black than we find in the Grand Cherokee, although you'll notice there is still plenty of that piano black around this area, around those controls, and then around the upper portion of the dashboard as well. Over here we have two pretty decently sized cup holders, a Qi wireless charging mat, one of those slot varieties, and then a padded center armrest that opens to reveal a pretty decently sized storage cubby over there. On the driver's side, we find a full color heads-up display over there. I haven't been able to turn it on. Well, actually, sorry, let me rephrase that. It is on, but I can barely see it over the lighting out there. And then we have a full LCD instrument cluster, of course, below it. Again, keep in mind that not all the software is production complete, but it looks like, again, a variation on what we've seen in the Ram and Grand Cherokee and the Wagoneer lineup as well. Moving out from there, we have a steering wheel that's reminiscent of the Wagoneer's steering wheel, two-spoke, flat bottomed right there. Not too much of a sport grip on either side, but I do kind of like this sort of square circle, or the squircle kind of steering wheel that we're seeing spreading across a number of new cars these days. Over here we have controls that mainly relate to the multifunction LCD. On this side, we have the controls that relate to the adaptive cruise control systems, etc., that are standard in the vehicle. Then on the back of the steering wheel, we have volume up, down, and track forward, backward. If I go ahead and open the door, I don't know if that is the production chime, but if it is, it's kind of annoying. We have a big piece of black plastic there, some extra controls down below, so if you were worried that they would be ditching the headlight controls, don't worry, we have those. We also have a powered tilt telescopic steering column. And then here is a better look at the door latch design. So there's actually an electronic catch under there, so nothing actually moves. They said that's pretty aerodynamic, and it also solves the problem of people wondering what happens to the door handle if you're in snowy weather and snow and ice kind of build up in there. Now let's get down to brass tacks. The Wagoneer S is smaller than I had expected. It's also a lot less expensive than I had expected. The launch edition is going to start at around $72,000, including destination, and that's about $20,000 less than honestly I had expected it to start, mainly because it's not an electrified Wagoneer. It's a new vehicle on a new platform for Jeep that was designed again to be electrified from the beginning. It also interestingly puts this in a very select segment of EV competition. The Polestar 3, the Porsche Macan, maybe, the Cadillac Lyriq for sure, something like the Acura ZDX. They're all about the same size, all about the same power. But we have a lot more standard power in the Wagoneer S, and that's the intriguing part. The 0 to 60 time in this is going to be significantly faster than the Lyriq, the ZDX, or the Polestar 3, and it's going to cost less than that competitive set. However, it is not that much bigger, especially on the inside, than something like a Tesla Model Y or a Chevy Blazer, and those are going to be reasonably less expensive. Jeep has said that this is going to qualify for the full federal tax credit, however, because its MSRP is below the cap, and because it's built in North America and its batteries are sourced from North America and, of course, the allied countries that are on the approved list, the battery pack will get the tax credit, at least in 2024. Whether or not it will continue for 2025 remains to be seen, but I would suspect, since this is a brand new model, they've probably sourced the components to make sure that they are in compliance for the next ratcheting up of that tax legislation. Let me know what you think about that down there in the comment section below. I'm really intrigued to see what this is like out on the road. Hopefully I'll be driving one by the end of the year, but we can sort of connect some of the dots here. Again, 235 with tires, eco-focused of course, low center of gravity as you might expect, under 7 inches of ground clearance, so a decent amount less than any version of the Grand Cherokee currently. Curb weight is about 300 pounds heavier than the outgoing Hellcat-powered Grand Cherokee. We never got one of those in this generation, but the previous generation of Grand Cherokee, of course, had 700 horsepower under the hood. This is going to be quicker 0 to 60 by at least a tenth of a second, they say. It's probably not going to stop as quickly, it's probably not going to handle as well, but I would suspect it actually probably will stack up relatively well against the outgoing V8 Grand Cherokee. And I say outgoing because for 2024, the V8 Grand Cherokee is dead. If you want a higher performing vehicle in the same size category with the Jeep logo, then you want the new Wagoneer S. Let me know what you think about all that down there in the comment section below, and of course stay tuned because hopefully we will get our hands on one of these just as soon as possible. See all of you later.